My name is Marilyn Cates. I am 62 years old. I had been setting the table since early morning, moving the plates the same way I had for more than 30 Easter Sundays. The familiar rhythm usually steadied me, but that day my mind kept drifting. I folded the napkins twice, smoothed each one with my palm, and tried to ignore the uneasy feeling that had been following me all week. By mid-afternoon, I had just placed the last fork down when my phone rang. I did not even need to check the screen. Lydia called less and less these days, and when she did, her voice always sounded as if she had already apologized to someone else for dialing my number. I answered with a soft, "Hi, sweetheart," hoping she might tell me she would arrive early. Instead, there was a silence long enough to blur into the sound of the wind against the window. "Mom," she said finally, "I need to tell you something." Her voice was tight, the way it got when she was choosing her words carefully. I waited, holding the edge of the chair to keep my hands still. "Nate's parents want us to spend Easter with them this year," she said. "It is easier that way." I tried to breathe normally, though something inside me dipped. "All right," I said, keeping my voice steady. "If that is what works for you." Another pause, this one sharper. "Mom, you are not really family to them, and I think we should keep things simple for now. We are not coming." I felt the air in the room thin. I pressed my thumb against the tablecloth to keep it from shaking. For a moment, there was only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a car passing by. "I understand," I said. I did not recognize my own voice. It was too calm, too light for what she had just taken out of me. Lydia exhaled as if she had finished a task she had dreaded. "I will call you next week." When the line went silent, I lowered the phone slowly. The table looked different now, as if someone had dimmed the colors. I stood there for a long moment, trying to understand how a single sentence could make a house feel so empty. Then I reached for one of the napkins and smoothed it again, because I did not know what else to hold on to as the rain began tapping softly against the window. After the call, I moved through the house as if I were walking underwater. Every room felt too still, too aware of itself. I picked up the bowl of dyed eggs and set it back down without knowing why. Habit kept my hands busy even when my mind had gone quiet. I turned on the stove out of reflex. The pot of carrots simmered, filling the kitchen with a sweetness that only made my chest feel tight. I stirred them once, then twice, though they did not need it. Cooking had always been my way of steadying myself, but that afternoon it felt like trying to comfort a ghost. My phone buzzed on the counter. A small hope sparked in me before I even reached for it. Maybe Lydia had reconsidered. Maybe she had heard her own words and felt the weight of them. But it was not a message. It was a notification. Lydia had posted a new story. I tapped it open. The screen filled with a long dining table covered in gold-trimmed plates and bright tulips. Her in-laws smiled on either side of her. Lydia was in the center, leaning toward her husband. The caption read, "Family Easter." I stared at it until my eyes blurred. She was laughing in the picture, one hand resting lightly on her wine glass. She looked comfortable, certain, settled in a way she never seemed at my house. My fingers curled around the phone. "All right," I whispered to myself. It was the only thing I trusted my voice with. I set the phone down and pulled out the tray of rolls I had prepared earlier. I brushed their tops with butter, even though I knew no one would eat them. The smell of cinnamon and warm dough wrapped around me like something trying to help, but not quite knowing how. The clock ticked in the quiet. I took a slow breath, willing myself not to be angry, not to drown in the ache sitting just beneath my ribs. Anger would only make the walls feel closer. I turned off the stove, slid the rolls back onto the counter, and stood still until the silence felt like it belonged to me again. I had just turned off the stove when the doorbell rang. The sound startled me enough that I wiped my hands on my apron twice before opening the door. Grace stood there, her gray coat unbuttoned and a foil-wrapped loaf in her hands. "I baked too much again," she said, lifting the bread slightly. "Lemon, your favorite." I stepped aside. "Come in, Grace." She walked in slowly, her eyes sweeping over the quiet kitchen, the untouched rolls, the pot of carrots I had abandoned halfway through. She set the bread on the counter and turned to me. "All right," she said softly. "Tell me what happened." I tried to busy myself with plates. Anything to avoid the look in her eyes. "Nothing happened. Lydia just has plans." Grace shook her head. "Marilyn, you cannot lie to someone who has lived next door to you for 20 years. Sit." I sat. My shoulders felt too heavy for my body. Grace waited a moment, then repeated, quieter this time. What did she say? The words moved slowly up my throat, as if they were afraid to be spoken. She said they were not coming, and that I am not really family to them right now. Grace froze. Her jaw clenched before she spoke again. "She said that to you." I nodded. She placed a hand over mine, warm and firm. "You listen to me. That girl loves you. But she has always cared too much about Nate's parents and their opinions. You know that. It does not excuse it." I murmured. "No," Grace agreed. Her voice steady, but it explains why the words came out crooked. That was not hate. That was insecurity. There is a difference. I looked down at our hands. It still hurt. Of course it hurt. She said, "You are her mother." Hurting you scared her more than she knows how to admit. I let out a breath I had been holding since the phone call. Grace squeezed my fingers once more, then reached for the lemon bread and began unwrapping it, as if grounding us both. "Eat with me," she said. "We will figure out everything else later." I nodded, feeling something in my chest loosen a small shift, but enough to keep me from sinking. After Grace left, I sat alone at the table, tracing the crumbs she had left behind. The house was quiet again, but not the same cold silence from earlier. This one felt softer, as if it were waiting for me to move. I walked to the hallway closet and tugged the door twice before it opened. The boxes stared back at me, and I reached for the one with the faded pink sticker Easter Lydia inside. The first thing I found was the paper bunny mask Lydia made when she was 5. The ears sagged to one side, the tape brittle with age. I held it carefully. "You said it made you look ridiculous," I murmured. Beneath it were photos Lydia at 7, with a basket bigger than her torso. Lydia at 10, scowling through a forced smile. Lydia at 14, standing stiffly in her new dress. Already learning how to look acceptable. 14 was also when she met Nate. I remembered the night she came home from dinner at his parents' waterfront house. "They asked what you do," she whispered. "I told them you do bookkeeping. They called it simple." Her cheeks had burned. She felt small, and she thought I should feel small too. I had tried to tell her simple work did not mean simple worth, but Lydia carried that shame quietly, letting it shape her. Holding one of the photos now, it occurred to me maybe her words yesterday were not about me at all. Maybe she had spent years trying to belong somewhere that kept telling her she was not enough, and distancing herself from me felt like part of the price. The thought hurt, but it also loosened something in my chest, like a door shifting on its hinges. I set the box of old photos back on the shelf and closed the closet door gently. My hands felt steadier than they had an hour earlier, though the ache beneath my ribs was still there, pulsing quietly. I walked back into the kitchen and stared at the half-prepared dishes. The rolls cooling untouched, the carrots softening in the pot. For a moment, I simply stood there. Then I reached for my old blue apron, the one Lydia used to tug on when she was little, and tied it around my waist. The knot felt familiar, almost grounding. "All right," I murmured to myself. "Let's begin again." I turned the oven back on, The warmth spread slowly through the kitchen, lifting the cool air that had settled after Grace left. I cracked open another carton of eggs, whisked them with cinnamon, and let the steady rhythm of cooking quiet my thoughts. When the timer beeped, I wiped my hands, picked up my phone, and opened Instagram. My fingers hovered for a moment before typing, "If you do not have family this Easter, you do now. My door is open." I copied the same message onto Facebook. Then I opened my contacts and sent a few texts short, simple ones. To Pastor Dean, if anyone at church is spending Easter alone, send them my way. To my former coworker, Alice, if you are not visiting your daughter this year, you are welcome here. To the young couple who had moved in across the street, if you are still settling in, there is a seat for you too. I set the phone down, expecting nothing. A few minutes passed. The oven hummed. I poured batter into pans, then the first vibration came. "Thank you. Marilyn, I might stop by if that is all right." Another, "I did not plan anything this year. I would love to come." And another hesitant, uncertain, but honest. I read each message slowly, letting them settle inside me like tiny lights flickering on one by one. The house was still quiet, but something in it had started to breathe again. The first knock came just as I was setting the ham on the counter. It was soft, almost apologetic. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened the door. Mr. Hopkins stood there, my mail carrier for more than 10 years, holding a small bunch of wildflowers wrapped in paper. "I saw your post," he said, clearing his throat. "My daughter is in California this year. I figured I could stop by. If you meant it." I meant every word. I told him, "Come in." He stepped inside cautiously, as if the invitation might disappear if he moved too quickly. A few minutes later, another knock. Maria from the market stood on the porch with her teenage son beside her. She lifted a casserole dish with both hands. "We did not want you to be alone," she said. Her son nodded shyly. "I'm glad you came," I said, guiding them in. Before I could close the door fully, a young couple approached from the sidewalk, the pair who had moved into the small rental across the street. They held a plastic box of cookies from the grocery store. The woman looked embarrassed. "We did not have time to bake anything." I smiled at her. Store-bought sweetness still counts as sweetness. They entered slowly, glancing around as if unsure of where to stand. Mr. Hopkins greeted them first, lifting his wildflowers in a small wave. Something about that simple gesture eased the tension in the room. Conversation began in pieces, Maria asking the couple where they had moved from. Mr. Hopkins telling my kitchen how he lost his wife 2 years ago. The teenager mumbling that this was his first Easter without his father. I listened, stirring sauces, checking the oven, letting their voices overlap in gentle waves. No one knew each other. Yet no one seemed to want to leave the circle forming near the table. Little by little, the house felt warmer not from the oven, but from the sound of people choosing to stay. By late afternoon, the house was full, voices rising and dipping over plates of food. Chairs pulled close together, people leaning in as if they had known each other far longer than a few hours. I had just passed Mr. Hopkins a second helping of ham when Grace slipped through the door carrying a bowl of potato salad. "Well," she said, grinning at the crowd, "look at this. You have built yourself a congregation." I laughed, surprised by how light the sound felt. "They built it. I just opened the door." Grace nudged my arm. "You should take a picture. Send it to Lydia. Show her what she missed." I shook my head. "This is not about her." "Then show the world," she said, half teasing. "People forget how beautiful kindness looks." Her words settled in my chest. I picked up my phone, hesitating for only a moment. Instead of opening the camera, I tapped the button for Instagram Live. A notification blinked. You are now live. The room quieted just enough for a few faces to turn toward me. I lifted the phone slightly. Hi, everyone. I began. I am Marilyn. I opened my door today for anyone who needed a place to be. Turns out, many of us needed one. Maria raised her fork in a silent cheer. Someone in the back shouted, "We are family now." The room laughed. I continued. Sometimes family is not the people you share a name with. Sometimes it is the ones who show up when you thought no one would. Comments began rolling across the screen. This is beautiful. Marilyn, I wish I were there. You remind me to call my mother. More joined. 10 viewers, then 20, then more. Behind me, the teenager held up a plate to the camera. Tell them the ham is amazing, he said, which made everyone laugh again. I lowered the phone to show the table, 50 people eating, talking, leaning into the warmth of strangers who did not feel like strangers anymore. Then a name appeared at the top of the screen. Lydia Cates joined the live. My hand went still. The room kept talking, unaware of the shift inside me. I swallowed hard and angled the camera back toward myself. I did not mention her. I only said, if you are watching this and feeling alone today, you are welcome in someone's home. There is always a seat waiting for you. The comments poured in faster, hearts floating up the screen in steady streams. Behind me, someone clinked a glass. Someone else began a story. Laughter rose again like a warm tide. And somewhere on the other side of a screen, my daughter watched all of it. Every smile, every embrace, every person who had chosen to sit at my table when she would not. By early evening, the house had settled into a soft, happy mess, half-empty plates, folded napkins, voices fading down the sidewalk as people headed home. I gathered dishes slowly, letting the warmth of the day linger in my chest. My phone buzzed on the counter. Mom, we are driving over. Please do not go to bed. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. My hands tightened around the towel I was holding. Then I set it down, wiped my palms on my apron, and walked to the front door. 20 minutes later, headlights swept across the driveway. A car door opened. Lydia stepped out first. Her makeup was smudged. Her eyes red in the way they got when she tried not to cry. Nate climbed out beside her, shoulders drawn tight, his expression strained. They walked up the path slowly. Hi, Mom, Lydia said. Her voice cracked on the second word. I opened the door wider. Come in. They stepped inside. Lydia looked around at the plates stacked on the counter, the crumbs, the casserole dishes cooling on the stove. She touched a fork with her fingertips as if it might break. You had a lot of people here, she whispered. I did. I said. She swallowed. I watched the whole thing. Nate shifted beside her. We should have come earlier, he murmured. I waited. I did not want to rescue either of them from the silence. Finally, Lydia spoke. I need to tell you why I said what I said. Her hands twisted together. Nate's parents. They talk about your house, the size, the furniture, the fact that you do not host dinners the way they do. Nate closed his eyes. I am sorry. I should have stopped them. Lydia continued, voice shaking. Every time we visit them, I feel like I am being measured, and I thought if we spent Easter there, they would see us as respectable. I wanted to fit in. I wanted them to think we were enough. She wiped her cheek. So I said something horrible to you, not because I meant it, because I was embarrassed and scared and stupid. I let her speak without interrupting, each word settling slowly into the space between us. I hurt you, she whispered. I hurt you in the worst way. I am so sorry. Mom, I took a breath, feeling the weight of the day shift again, this time heavier, but honest. Lydia waited, trembling. For the part that had to come next, Lydia stood there, hands trembling, Then she whispered, "Can I help clean up?" I nodded. "Yes, that would be good." We moved into the kitchen without another word. She picked up the plates while I scraped the leftovers into a bowl. The motions were simple, but the closeness felt fragile, like we were both afraid to make the wrong sound. Lydia rinsed a pan, her voice low. "I should have come to you, Them. I should have talked to you instead of letting their opinions get inside my head." I handed her a towel. "You were overwhelmed, but the words you chose left a mark." She nodded, swallowing hard. "I know." Nate stepped beside us, drying the casserole dish. "Marilyn, I owe you an apology too. I let my parents talk. And I did not defend you. That was wrong." He looked straight at me. "You deserved better." I kept my eyes on the counter as I wiped it clean. We cannot pretend today did not hurt. It did. But we can rebuild from here slowly, truthfully. No more hiding things to keep the peace. Lydia placed the last plate in the rack. "I can do that. I want to do that." Her voice sounded steadier than before, and for the first time that day, the silence between us felt like something healing rather than something broken. I woke early the next morning, long before the sun had warmed the windows. The house was quiet, but not the hollow kind of quiet from the day before. This one felt full, like something had settled instead of disappeared. I made coffee and checked my phone out of habit. Dozens of notifications lit the screen messages from people who had watched the live stream. I called my father for the first time in 5 years. "Your table reminded me to forgive my sister. Thank you for showing what real family can look like." I read each one slowly, holding the phone with both hands. Their words felt like small lanterns being lit one by one. A new post appeared at the top of my feed. It was from Lydia. A photo of the three of us in my kitchen, me, Lydia, and Nate leaning close. The dishes drying behind us. Her caption read, "Family is not about perfection. It is about who shows up." I sat down at the table and let the meaning of those words settle in me. After a moment, I put on my sweater and stepped outside. The air was cool, the kind of Portland morning that always smelled faintly of the ocean. I looked at the houses on my street, at the paths people walked to reach my door yesterday, at the memories that had reshaped the day I had dreaded. I had not been left behind after all. I had been opened wider than I expected, wider than I knew I could be. And now that love had found its way back, quietly and honestly, I felt ready for whatever door might open next.